Okay, here we go. It's coming up.
Yeah.
All right, so welcome to our spotlight with Graham Jackson from YWAM City Serve, Victoria, Canada. And this is a short 45-minute call. So we're going to have a dialogue here. I'm going to be interviewing Graham for the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And then at the end, I'd like you to fire questions. If you could put your questions in the chat channel. If you're not good at typing your questions out, don't worry. But we'll ask them at the end of my interview with him because I want you to hear a little bit from him of who he is and what he's doing. And then questions may start arising. So make sure you keep those questions in mind because we'd love to hear what you want to ask him. So, Graham, to kick this off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in YWAM and YWAM City Serve and the Ministerial Coalitions in just a few minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll be as quick as I can. I'm originally from Australia. You may see the t-shirt. But I've been in Canada since 1989. I did my DTS and School of Evangelism in Texas back in 87 and 88, and have pretty well been involved with YWAM since then. It was during '88 that when I was doing my School of Evangelism that I was in the kitchen on a weekend meal duty, and I was flipping pancakes and for the Saturday brunch, and I was praying while I was doing this sort of mindless task of flipping pancakes, and I was saying, God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to focus on for the rest of my life? And I felt him say to me as clear as anything, I want you to help build bridges in the body of Christ. And I burst out laughing at God because my background is Seventh-day Adventist. And in my words, would be one of the most separationist denominations on the face of the planet. And so I just like, God, how am I going to do that? I have no clue. I have no clue out there. Anyway, so God just answered a question with a question, and he says, how did you learn how to make pancakes this morning? I said, someone showed me. And he says, I'm going to show you how to build bridges. So when I came to Canada, I tried experimenting with that in different ways, but it wasn't the timing. But it was when I moved to Victoria in '94, God sort of said, now is the time. And so I began to um, just go to pastors' meetings, basically. So, so yeah,
Great.
that
So these these pastors meetings, I think you call them ministerial coalition or whatever the word is that you use.
yeah, I mean
Um,
yeah, we'll get into the coalition a bit later. Yep.
all right. Can you tell us a little bit about the context of Victoria City and some of its assets and challenges?
Well, I would say one of the assets is, and as a warm-blooded Australian, living in Canada was a shock to my system. But I would say if you're going to be a warm-blooded Australian living in Canada, Victoria is God's best kept secret. The ground doesn't even freeze here. So that is a real plus for me. Um, and I it is a beautiful city. It is an absolutely gorgeous city. Um, it's on an island, and that would be one of the challenges. If you want to go somewhere, you have to, either be prepared to take a ferry trip that's going to take you, an hour and 35 minutes, just the ferry trip alone, plus, all the getting to the ferry terminal and the waiting and all that sort of stuff. Um, and it's also a government city. It's our provincial capital, and so it's got government buildings, and part of the industry is government and all that sort of stuff as well too. But yeah, it's from a spiritual dimension. Um, it is apparently, before I came to Victoria in the mid '90s, it had been a fairly disjointed, um, complex kind of a city. But now, because we get together for prayer, we get together for um, monthly lunches, we get together for citywide Good Friday service and that sort of stuff. we have people coming to our city who are from other parts of Canada or the States, and this is say, we've never seen this kind of unity in the body of Christ anywhere else. This is unique here.
And what's the big challenge that you're facing there in Victoria that the ministerial coalition is trying to address now?
Well, we recently have been named as the worst city in Canada for drug abuse and homelessness. And that's a per capita basis because, like we're only about 400,000 for our greater region. Um, and so, and so the reality is because, climatically, it's an easy place to be homeless. Well, a lot easier than say Edmonton or Saskatoon or somewhere other like that. So, um, we've got this situation going on where people are here. They're tent city everywhere, but there's also a huge epidemic of drug use that goes with that, drug abuse that goes with that, and we're constantly losing people to overdoses and things like that. So
Yeah.
that is our major challenge at the moment.
All right. Has the screen gone dark on you guys? It just went dark on me, but
I mean,
is everything okay there?
That's good.
All right. I don't know what happened here. I just got so Graham, tell us. I'm back on. So Graham, tell us about the ministerial gathering. I've worked a lot with pastors' meetings, and how long has it? How long has it been meeting, and what was the nudge that happened to move them from prayer to action on the streets? Not that prayer is bad, prayer is wonderful, but sometimes pastors' meetings get stuck at the place of prayer. We never engage the problem that we're actually praying about. So tell us a little bit
And
about
I'd
that.
I'd back up on that one a little bit. Sometimes those prayer meetings turn into chit chat meetings, and that's one of the issues that we're trying to address at the moment. Where hey, are we here to pray or are we here just to hang out? Um, well, I would say like when I came to Victoria in '94, they were having a regular monthly luncheon, and it was back then it was called the Evangelical Pastors Fellowship, and and it was good times, good food, opportunity to hear someone speak, hang out, get to meet people and that sort of stuff. And there were a couple of sort of pockets of prayer groups that were happening around the city as well too, sort of the evangelical group and the charismatic group and that sort of thing. And so they were taking place. And it wasn't until about it was the late 90s when George Otis Jr. and the Sentinel Group were coming out with those transformational videos and that sort of thing. That
Yeah.
kind of really caught the imagination of some of the key leaders here in the city. And they've said, like, if we're going to see this happen, we need to get together and not just be sort of siloed in our sort of comfortable spots, sort of thing. So we sort of got together as one uh, body of the city on a Thursday morning and just began to pray. And so that's continued since '99. And we've seen some ebbs and flows. Right now we're at a real ebb. We're down to about an average of about 6 or 8 people, but we've seen upwards to 30 plus people coming out regularly on a Thursday morning to
Wow.
pray. Um, and so it was about a year and a bit ago that there's a group of retired pastors that meet fairly regularly. I think they meet every week to pray and that sort of stuff. And um, one of them in particular, John knows him quite well. He was just staying with him. He approached us and he says, we've been praying and we recognize that this issue of homelessness and drug abuse on our streets. Um, the government has done all they can do. They're throwing tons of money at it, millions and millions of dollars at it, but nothing is changing. And the only thing that can change this is God. And so what is the church going to do about it? And so we sort of scratched our heads and said, yeah, very good question. And one of the things, and as YWAM is sitting here, you'll understand the sort of tension that we're with. We're a sodality. We're one of these people that like to get out and go. Well, most pastors belong to the modality of the church, where they're looking after their sheep and their people and all that sort of stuff. And so we said, well, at least let's have a lunch where we address this. We have one of these retired guys come in and speak to it. And so he did. And so after that, we sort of said, okay, what can we practically do? So we said, look, let's take one of our Thursday morning prayer times and take it to the streets. So we can see what's happening out there. And for some of us, that wasn't a big step because we've been there, we've done it. We've been out there with
Wow.
sandwiches and hot chocolate and all that sort of stuff. For others, it was a huge stretch. And we were about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months into doing this. Every month we'd be out walking around the different areas of the city and that sort of stuff. And so I think it was actually a year ago this month, it was March of 2025, that our prayer time, we actually met at McDonald's on Pandora Street. And it's sort of like this McDonald's is in the heart of the epicenter of our issue. And we met there, and a couple who I had just met, and they're doing street ministry stuff. They are off the streets themselves. They have come out of, you know, a really horrific lifestyle. They've turned their lives around. They've accepted Jesus into their heart. They were recently baptized, recently got married. They've had their kids restored to them and all that sort of thing. They are out there ministering, and they're doing an amazing work, an amazing job about it. John has just put a video together about them as well too, and it's a really good job that they're doing. They're
Mm.
really really good work. And so they turned up to this prayer meeting and they bought a whole bunch of breakfast sandwiches from McDonald's, hundreds of dollars worth. And so they said, let's give these out. So we're giving them out and we're praying for people and we're ministering to them and all that sort of stuff. And we got towards the end of this and we decided we should do a little bit of a debrief. And so we called ahead to one of the churches that is right downtown on Pandora Street. We said, listen, can we meet in your lobby to do a bit of a debrief? So there was about, I don't know, 15, 16 of us, and we're just standing around in this lobby. And one of these retired pastors who is a patriarch of our city, of the church of the city, well known, well respected, people love him to bits, has lived in the city for decades, longer than I've been here. I've been here just over 30 years. He's been here probably 40 plus years. I don't know how long. But anyway, with tears in his eyes, he just breaks down in front of us all and goes, I have lived in this city for decades, and I have never seen street people like I have today. God has touched my heart.
Mm.
And it was a turning block for us, a turning point for us. We just recognized that, hey, if nothing else is happening, we're learning something and God's beginning to speak to us. And so out of that, I just started realizing, hey, there are a bunch of different ministries that are out here doing street ministry. They're loving on people. They're bringing Jesus as best they can, but most of them don't even know each other. Don't even know each other exists. Some may know each other, but anyway. So I went to one of the other guys. He was actually the guy who was helping to lead us around these prayer walks. And I said, "Hey, Darren, what do you reckon if we begin to sit down with everyone and just talk, see how we can build a coalition together?" He jumped all over. He said, absolutely, let's do it. Let's do it. Because he runs a ministry called Sanctuary Youth Centre, and it's for um, street disenfranchised um, street people. And so kids, youth. And so he's like, absolutely, let's do it. So it took us a couple of months to pull everyone together. And then we did. We sat down, and there was about 6 or 7 organizations represented, and we just began to talk. We just said, "Hey, listen, how can we work together?" And the sort of like almost the resounding consensus that was in the room was, you know what? This is too long in coming. We have needed this for ages, and we want to be able to collaborate together, work together, share resources where possible, and all that sort of thing. So that's sort of how it began about a year ago, and we're fumbling along with God's direction.
But there's a real synergy that's happening
Yes.
between the pastors and the nonprofits. And are these nonprofits Christian, non-Christian, or a mix?
This is where we felt we needed to draw the line because there are many nonprofits out there that are not Christian. Um, and here in Canada, we've got to be very careful. If we're taking government funds, we can't proselytize. We can't share the gospel. And so we said, look, we're not going to fall into that pit hole.
Yeah,
We're going to blatantly be a coalition of Christian ministries, and we're going to be willing to and be prepared to share the gospel as appropriate, you know. And so all of us in the group are Christians, and all of us believe that we're not going to compromise, that we're not going to, you know,
beautiful,
dumb it down.
beautiful. So now, as you're listening, you guys on the call here, you've got questions. You put them in the chat, or in a little bit, if you don't want to put them in the chat. Sometimes it's hard to type out your question. Get it ready in your mind because I want to give it a little bit of time here, just a little bit, to just have you guys ask any questions or make any comments without long preaching or sermons, because we just have a short amount of time here. Graham, what's been the effect on the pastors getting involved and going out of the streets? Is it changing their um, perspective on the city? Is it having a shift in their theology of the city, or in unity and working together?
Um, uh, it's sort of it's a little hard for me to answer that question. I would say simplistically yes and no. I think there are some changes that are happening, and I think there's also um, like we were just a week ago, we were just having a discussion around this because some of these pastors are recognizing that, like we have so much on our plates, like adding one more thing is too much. And so I think their hearts are there, but I think practically they're not. And for some of them, and when we do these prayer walks, it's actually kind of interesting because say if there's 10 people there, 3 of them may be active pastors, the rest are paraministry organizations. And the ones who notice that the most are the paraministry leaders and participants who go, where are all the pastors, Well, yeah. So uh I think we're in this for the long haul. I think we've got to myself especially, have got to recognize that, hey, attitudes may not change overnight, and priorities may not change overnight. But if these pastors are willing to encourage their people to get involved and to do things that are practical, I think that's a win for us.
Good, good, good. You want to share any of the nuts and bolts and obstacles that you've had to overcome, or um, things that you've had to do to keep this moving forward?
Um, well, I think one of the things, and like eh, you folks will recognize this when it comes to ministry and that sort of stuff. I recognize that there are people in it for whatever motivation they are, and it's not necessarily good motivation. It's not necessarily wholesome, and so sometimes it's sort of like their ego gets in the way, and they're um, more about promoting their own ministry and what they're doing than about wanting to work together. So that's definitely it is a current issue. Um, and then there's also, I think, from a plus point of view, there has been uh, a real ability to, um, what could I say, uh, for those who are wanting to work together, to say, hey, listen, how can we work together? Already, we've got two of the organizations. One of the organizations is the Lions Pride organization, who are very much into, getting people into recovery and that sort of thing. And the other organization is called Justice Van, and they're very much into, getting an individual a sleeping bag or a tent, or practical stuff like that. And they're already saying, hey, listen, we need to let's get together. Let's get a office together so that we can share resources and work together that way. And just this last Monday, we YWAM Victoria was hosting a school group from Edmonton, doing a spring break outreach, and they connected with Lions Pride, and we did this great big huge barbecue and food and clothing and that sort of stuff right down in the middle of the epicenter. And so we had Youth with a Mission, we had Lions Pride, we had Justice Van, Hope Mission, all that sort of stuff. We're all interfacing together, working together. And so that's something that a year ago was just not happening at all. So in a year, we've actually
Mm-hmm.
come a long way.
So where do you see this going, and what are you hoping for? What are you dreaming about? Where this might lead?
Well, I think the thing that God's put in my heart is, and for as long as I've lived in Victoria, which, as I said before, is over 3 decades, I've heard this prophetic word that has said that God is going to do something in Victoria that is going to go across the nation and and spread out from there. Many of it, and I've heard that consistently. Even recently, I heard it again, and it's been a prophetic word that's been given by known prophets and not known prophets. But so, what do you do with that? And so, I figure if we've just recently been named the worst city in the country for drug abuse and homelessness, this is one thing I didn't add to that when I first said that. Told you that our new police chief came from Vancouver, and she said, I've worked the beat on East Side Vancouver, and this has never been um, the situation here in Victoria is worse than East Side Vancouver, and East Side Vancouver is really bad.
Yeah.
And so for her to come out and say that was sort of like, okay, we've got a problem here. Um, so if we're being the worst city, why can't God turn that around? Why can't we become this place of glory this place that he transforms and turns it into being a place where his name is being glorified? And so that to me is the hope. And I sort of like, when I share that with the other Christian ministries, they go, yeah, I think we can do that, because we've got something that all these either government run organizations or other secular nonprofits haven't got. We've got the living God with us who transforms lives. And the
Amen.
interesting thing is, I watched this on Monday. Bylaw has been pretty hard on a lot of these homeless people. They go in and they just sweep the block, take away all their stuff, all their belongings, and all that sort of thing. To the point, and this is horrific as far as I'm concerned, to the point that they had a memorial service last week for a number of people who have recently died. And Jimmy and Megan were telling me, this is a couple from Lions Pride, were telling me that um, one of those people who died, who passed away, didn't die from a drug overdose. He died from an asthma attack, and the bylaw had taken away all his stuff, including his medication. So he wasn't able to administer Ventolin or whatever he had to stop the asthma attack. And so he died. And so um, when we did this thing on Monday, we're right we're right in the center of everything. And by law walked past us a number of times, said hello. The cops came by, waved at us, left us alone because they could see that we were doing something. But yeah, that was
Yeah,
good.
that's really beautiful. Any last words of encouragement to us before I open it up for questions from the crowd? Maybe, I don't know, people are feeling like my city's too fragmented, um, and maybe a word of encouragement of how to unite the body of Christ together.
Well, I would say, and I can send you the link to this video, or I can put it in the chat. Uh,
Please
Ken,
do.
a few years ago, I put together a little video, and there's some wording in it from Ed Silvosa and that sort of stuff, just with regards to uh, just get together, guys. And that's the one thing that I've recognized is that like okay, you may not be able to pull all the ministers in your city together, but start somewhere, and just
Yes.
gather who you can. Like if there's no ministerial, start one. If there is a ministerial, go to it. Be there. Be ready to serve. Be willing to participate. Be willing to bear arms with them, because you know we are the body. And just because we're not a church, I think sometimes the church needs us mission organizations to help sort of like coax them along a little bit.
Yeah. 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 Those are good words. And I think that's so encouraging. I've worked for years. I helped to start the Chennai Transformation Network in India. And sometimes it's just hard. And sometimes it was just a few pastors gathering. Now it's turned into a large movement, and it takes time
Yep.
for people to gather. But uh, the church is the answer to the problems we face in society, working together with nonprofits and others to make a difference. So I just want to open it up here. John, we're looking forward to this video that Graham talked about. I don't know when that's going to be ready to go.
It,
Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that. But if others have questions or comments, keep your stuff to about a minute or so we can hear from others on the call. John.
yeah, the video is released when Jimmy and Megan decide to release it. And then and I just sent them the final yesterday or the day before. So it's really up to them. And then I'll put it on our YWAM Organic website as well. Once they've got it on theirs, I don't want to steal their thunder. So yeah. Graham, I did have a question for you though. Um, Having been there last month, and we spent a day feeding the homeless. Well, 2 days actually. I was there for the big barbecue that one time as well. My question is, how do you find the balance between feeding as we're supposed to, feeding them, finding sleeping bags at the barbecue? They had a clothing uh, boutique for people to pick up what they needed. How do you find the balance between that and enabling them to stay on the street?
That's a very good question. And I think, like for me personally, because I'm not the one, I'll come and help do a barbecue, all that sort of stuff. I'm not the one who is who is sort of like the ministry leader there in this situation. I do know, for example, Frank Woods, who has the Justice Van. We've had this conversation just casually a little bit, and you met Frank. He
Mhm.
was there that day.
Yeah.
He 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 is sort of recognizes that, there's times when he has to say no. Um, you can't take 3 sleeping bags. Um, but he also recognizes that he may have given a sleeping bag to this person last week, but by law has come and cleaned it out
Mm.
and thrown it in the dumpster. You know, so he has to give it, or he doesn't have to, but he chooses to give another one.
Mhm.
So I hear the question, and it's always a fine line. But I think, you sort of oftentimes it's that Holy Spirit sort of prompting you, no, don't give here, or yes, you need to give, that sort of stuff. So I think we've got to trust that the Holy Spirit's working in these people to be able to do that sort of thing, to know when and what to do.
All right, we've got a question in the chat from the Walkers. Are you building relationship with the city and with bylaw? Not sure what that means there, the
I,
last word, but Graham?
I can say it's a yes and a no. The with the bylaws, the different organizations definitely have relationship with a lot of these bylaw officers. And I know, just having talked to Jimmy and Megan, they have intervened when critical situations are going to take place, and so they have uh, managed to sort of stop bylaw from removing stuff or something like that in order to be able to help the person through their crisis sort of thing. The no part of it is, with regards to the city, at this stage, we haven't been building relationship. And it's not that we won't, it's that right now, we just feel that we need to sort of like build our foundation, build our framework of who we are. And we also recognize, and I sort of said this before, that the government on all 3 levels, municipal, provincial, and federal, have thrown millions of dollars at this situation, and very little has changed. All that's really changed is it's taken it from the epicenter of Pandora Street and spread it out throughout the city. And so we recognize that we don't want to be enabling that. We want to actually be seeing lives changed. And we've had the privilege of being able to baptize a number of uh, people who have made a choice to come off the streets, and they chose to be baptized right downtown in the epicenter so that their peers could see the changes in their lives. And they are some of them, and like with anything like this, because there's an addiction issue and that sort of stuff, some of them have slipped back into their lifestyle, but we're not giving up on them. Jesus isn't giving up on them, so neither are we. And so we just feel that we need to walk the line that Jesus would have us walk. Yes, be relational, and yes, be willing to serve the city and that sort of thing. But at the same time, not we're not going to enable the city, either.
Thank you. Any other questions? John, if you could put it even in the chat, your YWAM organic uh, link so that people know where to look for the video when it goes up. That'd be great if you could put that in the chat. Anybody else with a question for Graham or a comment you want to make about your situation in your city?
I guess in Kelowna, we are a city of 150,000, with another 150,000 around us. A huge, similar to Victoria, we have a huge population of homeless and drug addiction because of our climate. Um, we just, in the last probably year, have begun to meet more regularly for prayer with some of the parachurch and prayer warriors and some pastors. So we're at the infancy stages of doing some of what you're talking about. The challenge, obviously, is already mentioned. Pastors are overloaded. I just heard the recent statistic of 80% of pastors will have left the ministry within 10 years. Yeah, huge challenges, but really encouraged by what's happening there. We also have the advantage of having several Christian addiction recovery centers in Kelowna and several churches that are specifically reaching out to the homeless downtown. So we have a lot to work with, but a large problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good, man. Thank you. Anybody else you want to share what's happening? I see here from Kelowna. Hope I'm saying that right. Currently has 14 churches and parachurch groups prayer walking the downtown area. Yes, prayer walking. I can't stress what a significant key that is. It's the reason we go prayer walking is so that the city goes prayer walking in us. That's why we go prayer walking. It's to get the city into our heart.
Yeah.
Steve Hawthorne says prayer walking is praying on site with insight.
Yeah.
So prayer walking the downtown area since February 18th with at least one group out on the street each day, 1 to 2 hours per day. That is wonderful. Prayer walking is where, that's really the exegesis of the city, because you start seeing things that you'd never seen before. So great. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else from your location of your challenges that you're facing? Graham, you want to share any of your photos that you might have so people can get a glimpse of the activity that's going on in the street? And then we'll close it up here. I said 45 minutes. If you want to stay on after the talk, I try to keep these to 45 minutes. Sometimes we get zoomed out. So I find 1 hour sessions seem to be a little bit stressful and long. So I try to keep these to 45. But if you want to stay on afterwards, we'll stay on for a little bit and just chit chat. But Graham, what do you got here?
Well, if I mentioned that we did a baptism, this is the guy on the right is Gareth Evans, who is one of the retired pastors. The guy on the left is Jimmy, who is with Lions Pride, and the guy in the middle is this one guy who actually grew up in a Christian background, got on the streets, got addicted, all that sort of thing, and he wanted to be baptized. Obviously, my thing is not wanting to go over. But anyway, yeah, so we baptized him along with two other young men. Of course, it's going to be ornery, just as you said, Tim. Stops. Sorry about that. But anyway, the one thing I would say is because we're choosing to keep this on an annual basis in front of the pastors at the ministerial. And so last October, we did a panel we got all the organizations together, sat down, 3 questions, basically, who are you, what do you do, short testimony, and how can the church be involved, sort of stuff, and so that was very poignant. And so this year Tim's going to come up with Steve Benquist, and they're going to share at the ministerial in November, beginning of November, and we're going to sort of like do a little workshop seminar thing. We're not sure how it's all going to look, but we're going to be doing something that sort of builds on this, where we can be getting city people involved, engaged, even if they're just praying. That, I believe, is the entry point into it, and we're doing that with a coalition. We've sort of said, okay, we need to do really look at this, at what we're doing here. We need to have prayer covering, because my belief is that these people are on the streets because the devil has messed with their lives, And if Christian ministries are coming in to sort of rescue them off the streets, the devil is going to go after them. And so we're getting prayer covering that is working on covering all these ministries. We're starting to look at how can we disciple these people that are giving their lives to the Lord, because many of them aren't going to want to go into a local church. And the flip side of that, many of the local churches ain't going to feel comfortable with these people coming in. And then also at the same time, we're doing a structure. How can we structure? We've already got together a vision statement, a mission statement, and now and values, and now we're working on a memorandum of understanding. How can we work together as different groups? How can we share resources? How can we share contacts legally and all that sort of thing? So, yeah, it's a
Great.
lot, I know.
Well, guys, it's 12:15, and if you want to officially leave the call, please do. You can leave anytime, of course. But I want to just kind of end it there, keep it to 45 minutes. There are some things coming in the chat here. Thank you for Pastor from Pakistan sharing some of the challenging situations that you're facing there in your church, in your location. And I've put a link in there. Tom White, Tom White is all over the world leading pastor prayer summits from Israel to India to Indonesia to the Middle East and all over the place across North America. He came out with a book recently out for practitioners on city reaching strategies. So I put the link there. If you have other resources, please put them in. It's always good to share our resources with one another so that we can learn. But thank you, Graham, for being on the call. I see you got one more thing you'd like to say. Please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you're talking about resources. I dropped in up there
Yes.
3 links, and I don't know if you want to send them out when you send out the email or what, but yeah, they're
Thank you.
different videos. One is of the panel that I talked about, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you guys for being on the call. I'll hang around. Graham, do you have time to hang around for a little bit? So Graham and I will hang around if you have more questions or you want to share. And like I said, this video will be uploaded by the end of this week to that link that I put in there. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.